The Lavender Witch, Quest of the Supreme. The air in the grotto hung thick and heavy, a curtain of mist from the roaring waterfall. On a moss-slicked stone stood Kelvin, her form a contradiction, an elegant dress, a stylish hat, heeled shoes, all carved from unyielding brown rock. Opposite her, a beast of myth, Baihu, the white tiger, whose gilded armor and horned helm gleamed even in the deep jungle shade. They were silence and fury, poised on the precipice of battle. With a sharp stomp of a stone heel, Kelvin commanded the earth. The ground groaned and then shattered, immense, jagged spikes of rock bursting upwards, aiming to impale the celestial tiger. She followed the assault with a gesture to the sky, and a torrent of giant boulders rained down, each meant to crush and obliterate. But Baihu was motion incarnate. He flowed between the spikes like water, a white and gold blur against the green. The boulders that hailed from the sky were met with contemptuous indifference, striking his armor and bouncing away with dull, harmless thuds. He was an impregnable fortress, a force of nature unto himself. Inhaling the humid air, Baihu unleashed a roar that was not sound, but pure force. A massive sonic boom of wind blasted from his maw, a wave of kinetic energy that tore leaves from trees and sent water from the fall spraying sideways. Yet it broke against Kelvin's rocky form as if she were a mountain, utterly unmoved. The stalemate was absolute, power against power, defense against defense. Baihu, unimpressed by the stalemate, let out a low growl. The air around him shimmered with heat. "You are a creature of stone," his voice rumbled, not through the air but directly in her mind. Static, unchanging. Let us see how your rock fares against true dynamism. Golden runes flared to life on his armor, and the grotto was bathed in a searing orange light. He opened his jaws, but instead of a roar, a column of white-hot fire erupted forth, a roaring inferno that turned the mist to steam and the moss on the rocks to ash. The stream of flame was a living thing, a serpent of destruction that coiled through the air, aimed directly at Kelvin. Kelvin reacted instantly. She slammed her palms together, and the very ground before her rose up, melting and reforming in the intense heat. It cooled in a heartbeat into a wall of glistening black obsidian, smooth and reflective as a dark mirror. The fire serpent crashed against it, shattering into a million fiery sparks. The heat was immense, a physical pressure that made the air thick and hard to breathe. The obsidian shield glowed cherry red, and hairline fractures began to spiderweb across its surface. Kelvin gritted her teeth, her stone form radiating heat. She could feel the shield weakening, the raw elemental power threatening to overwhelm her creation. Seeing his fire thwarted, Baihu changed his assault without pause. He turned his head towards the roaring waterfall, and with a flick of his horned helm he commanded the water. The cascade ceased its downward plunge, hanging in the air for a moment before surging forward, a colossal wave under his control. The wave of water, cold and immense, crashed into the superheated obsidian shield. The thermal shock was catastrophic. With a sound like a mountain cracking in half, the shield exploded into a cloud of black sand and steam, drenching Kelvin in the clearing. Drenched and momentarily blinded, Kelvin staggered. Baihu did not grant her a moment's respite. He threw his head back and roared at the sky. The clouds above the grotto darkened instantly, and a bolt of jagged violet lightning lanced down, striking the ground at his feet. The air crackled with ozone, and his fur stood on end, charged with celestial energy. "Stone conducts," his voice echoed in her mind again, laced with cruel amusement. He swiped a claw through the air, and the lightning obeyed, leaping from his body in a blinding arc, a whip of pure energy that cracked across the clearing, seeking to ground itself in Kelvin's rocky form. Kelvin knew a direct hit would shatter her. Desperate, she drew on a different power, not the solid earth, but its toxic breath. She exhaled, and a cloud of thick, gray-green gas erupted from her lips. It was not just poison, it was inert, a miasma that refused to carry a charge. The lightning whip struck the cloud and dissipated harmlessly, its energy scattered. Baihu's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise. He unleashed another gale of wind, the same force that had failed to move her before, intending to scatter the noxious cloud. But the gas was heavy, clinging to the ground like a shroud, swirling sluggishly but refusing to disperse. It was anathema to his clean, elemental power. A slow smile spread across Kelvin's stone face. The stalemate was broken, but not in his favor. Earth alone was not enough to defeat a creature of pure elemental fury. But the earth had other gifts. Slower, subtler, and far more cruel. She would not just fight his elements, she would corrupt them. With another stomp of her heel, Kelvin didn't raise spikes, but cracked the very bedrock. From these new fissures, a thick, viscous black sludge bubbled up, smelling of sulfur and decay. The geysers of poison splattered across the clearing, turning the vibrant green moss to a blackened slime. Baihu leaped back, but the sludge was spreading too fast. It coated his paws, thick and clinging. Where it touched his gilded armor, the metal began to hiss and corrode, the brilliant gold tarnishing to a dull, pitted bronze. He roared in fury and pain, his elemental purity violated by the foul substance. In a desperate gambit, Baihu drew upon the cold. The air frosted over, and a wave of absolute zero washed out from him. He intended to freeze the sludge solid, to shatter it and free himself. The ground whitened with frost, and ice crystals formed on the leaves of the trees. But the poison was a corruption of life, and it had its own unnatural warmth. The ice cracked and sublimated as it formed, unable to quell the chemical fire of the sludge. It continued its relentless work, eating away at his armor, seeping towards the living tiger within. He was trapped. He was being unmade. And he knew it. A change occurred. The lavender light that always seemed to hum beneath Kelvin's stone skin vanished. Her eyes began to glow with a dark, sickly green. 4 dark amethyst crystals pushed their way through the fabric of her rock dress, and venomous green vines, thorny and cruel, wrapped themselves around her hat. She was no longer a witch of the earth, but of its poison. Levitating slightly, her stone heels lifting from the ground, Kelvin extended her hands. From her palms billowed a thick, acrid fog, a rolling cloud of green poison that slithered across the clearing. It was not swift, but it was relentless, consuming the space between them, its touch a promise of decay. Baihu, for all his speed, could not outrun the air itself. The fog enveloped him, and he coughed, a deep, guttural sound. The poison seeped past the gold leaf, finding the life within. His movements became sluggish, his legendary quickness stolen from him. The fortress had been breached, not by force, but by corruption. Kelvin pressed her advantage. She gathered the toxic energy, forming it into heavy, dark stones in her hands. She hurled them, and where they struck Baihu's armor, they did not bounce. They stuck, and from them, poisonous vines erupted, wrapping around the great tiger's limbs and torso, pulsing with a malevolent green light that shocked his body and sapped his remaining strength. Closing the distance, Kelvin summoned a mace of jagged obsidian into her hand. She rained blow after blow upon the ensnared tiger's helmet, the sound of cracking stone echoing through the grotto. Finally, the gold-leafed armor gave way. A small hole appeared over his heart. Without hesitation, Kelvin thrust her hand inside, channeling all her power, not of poison, but of pure rock, into his body. The fur, the muscle, the bone, all turned to cold gray stone. For the final, definitive blow, she raised her arms. A huge row of impossible purple flowers bloomed from the ground, an organic cannon nestled in their center. A concentrated beam of purple, poisonous light shot forth, striking the statue. The explosion was immense, a cloud of purple and gray dust. When it cleared, all that remained was a single, perfect tiger tooth, which floated gently into Kelvin's chest. The power was hers. She could now summon armor of any element, a true supreme.